Welcome to Clif Chats. My name is Clifford Kaufman. I'm a percussionist educator here in Nashville. And joining me today, this evening, is Jason Blume. Jason's actually in Hawaii, so still the daytime there. And I'm going to have Jason join right now. Jason's songs are he's played on Grammy-nominated albums, as well as having sold more than 50 million copies. And hello, Jason. Maybe you can hear me yet. One of the few writers to have written songs for Billboard's pop, country, and R&B charts, working with artists such as Britney Spears, the Backstreet Boys, the Gipsy Kings, Jesse McCartney, the Nashville Chamber Orchestra, and so many more. He also has written songs for shows such as Scrubs, Friday Night Lights. Welcome, Jason. Hello. I was just introducing you, and it looked like you're connecting now. Welcome.
Looks like I'm there.
You're there. You made it. Awesome.
I did. Let me tell you, you have no idea how lucky we are, because yesterday I had no internet the entire day.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you got it back.
Me too.
We need the internet these days, don't we?
Boy, no kidding.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much so until it's gone.
For sure. And I'd love to talk about this last COVID year and what you've been up to during that time. So let me finish introducing you, if you don't mind.
Sure, sorry.
No worries. Jason Blume has also written books such as 6 Steps to Songwriting Success, The Comprehensive Guide to Writing and Marketing Hit Songs, The Business of Songwriting, and Inside Songwriting, Getting to the Heart of Creativity. As well, he produces and narrates instructional audio CD series, and also teaches, such as my first experience or encounter, I don't know if encounter is the right word, was in Nashville at was one of your songwriting workshops, and I was not participating, I was just observing, and it was fascinating for me, and I'd love to talk about that process too. The way that worked, for anyone who's not familiar, is songwriters bring songs and play the songs, and then Jason will give them feedback, and it was fascinating, and it was really a real range of I guess skill levels, as well as different genres, and it was really interesting. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for joining Clif Chats, Jason. I'm excited to talk with you.
Pleasure is mine. And before we really get started, I want to follow up on what you were just saying about those workshops in Nashville. Sure. The good news for anybody watching this, regardless of where you are, I've just signed on for another year of those workshops, but they're all online now. So I can have students literally from all around. I do have students from literally all around the world. And I'll talk a little bit about how the online process is different, whether it's teaching or whether it's co-writing. There are pros and cons to face-to-face versus online. But the good news for people who don't want to have to be in Nashville for those workshops is all you need to be on is your computer. So part of those workshops, by the way, is I get to choose material that I forward to 10 different publishers. So it's a great opportunity for people. I have lost count of how many years I've been teaching these BMI workshops, and you don't need to be a BMI member, by the way, to attend the workshops, but it's more than 25 years. That I know, because I started when I was 7.
Oh, you started what?
Oh, I started teaching when I was 7. Yeah, 25 years ago. Boom.
Okay. So you started teaching when you were 7, and what were you teaching?
Oh, I was teaching songwriting, of course.
So you were teaching songs that you had written, or other people's songs? What were you teaching?
Of course, I am joking. I didn't start teaching when I was 7. I mean,
who knows?
25 years ago, I was 7. Well, in my dreams. But teaching is a huge part of who I am. I actually think it defines me as much, or even more so, as being a songwriter. A very odd thing happened to me. I moved to Los Angeles to be a superstar, overnight sensation. Mm-hmm. I gave it 1 year. I would have a Mercedes in my driveway within a year. And you know, what I found is there is so much that I didn't know about the business. I had no, just no, I did not know the title was supposed to be in the song.
Hmm.
I didn't know what a chorus was. So much of this stuff is learnable. So I went to a songwriting workshop, and the minute the teacher walked on stage, I looked at her and I thought, that's what I want to do.
Hmm.
That I want to be a successful enough songwriter so that I can teach.
Okay.
And all the way through my career, I mean, when I got the Backstreet Boys cut, that was the biggest cut in the world. I mean, nothing. And my thought was not, wow, how many cents per, how many millions and millions of albums they're going to sell. Honestly, my thought instead was, nobody will ever be able to take away that level of credibility from me as a teacher. That
Yeah.
I will now have gotten a cut on the biggest album in the world. And little did I know that it would happen 3 times in the span of a few years. It was just mind-boggling. Crazy, crazy, wonderful times for
Yeah,
me.
and I'd love to talk about putting yourself in the right place, as well
Mhm.
as coming to kind of working backwards from now to, with the pandemic. So were you teaching online much before the pandemic?
I wouldn't say much. I
Uh,
was teaching an online webinar that is an interactive thing. It still happens, where I do song critiques for people, and it's very small. And it is, when I say it's intensive, I spend a minimum of 3 hours on 7 songs. And
mhm.
I've listened to all of those songs in advance over and over again. So we go very, very deep. I
Mhm.
had been doing that for a couple of years before the pandemic, and I had been teaching online for Berklee College of Music periodically.
Mhm.
I also had done one class online for university in Sweden, but 98% of what I was doing was face-to-face, in-person workshops. And I was doing a tremendous amount of them. I was doing at least 6 of them every year in Nashville. I was teaching NSAI's Song Camp. I was teaching at an incredible university for the arts in Norway twice a year. I was teaching in the UK, and Hawaii, Los Angeles, Australia, New Zealand, all face to face. I had the dream job for a travelaholic,
Mhm.
and that all came to a very abrupt stop. I guess almost a year and a half ago. And luckily, I already knew at that point that I could do this online
Uh,
because of the things with Berklee and the things with my webinars.
was it a similar
So,
format where you were? Was it a like a Zoom or Zoom like thing where you
yeah,
could see the participants and interact?
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And all the only difference would be that I could mute everybody except one person at a time. So it wasn't total cacophony. So there are pros and cons to it being online versus it being in person. And of course, like I was saying before, now people can attend without being in that physical location. They
Mhm.
don't have to fly to Nashville to attend my Nashville BMI workshops. And I literally get students from around the world. The downside is, as great as it works in terms of conveying the information, there's just something that's missing when I can't look at somebody physically right in the room and interact with them, even though we're talking online. But it's
Mhm.
a new world. And how lucky we are that we have something called Zoom and FaceTime. And I mean, it's amazing, really, what we're able to do. This led me, if you're okay with my moving on, it led me to
Absolutely.
think about, what about the differences in writing online, co-writing
Yeah, yeah.
online versus the normal sitting face to face that we expect. For me, it's not quite as different as some people might think, because a lot of the way that I would co-write in the past is somebody would send me a backing music track.
Uh,
100% of the music is done. Drums, bass, keyboards, if there are guitars, guitars, everything's done, but there's no melody for the singer to sing, and there's no lyric. And I add the melody and the lyric, and that's called the top line. So I'm a top liner. And that really is the way that almost all pop music, R&B music, hip hop music, dance music, it's all written that way. And it's been being written that way for ages. I don't know, 20 years or whatever. So for me, that didn't change. Somebody could still email me a track. I could work on it. And here's the advantage part of not being face to face. I could take my time and work on it.
You can
instead of feeling, go on, I'm sorry.
You can edit yourself.
Exactly. And I could wait until the next day and say, which of these 3 chorus melodies is the one that's sticking with me? So there was that advantage, but there is something to be said for the genres where you sit in a room and co-write. I mean, in Nashville, I went to an office for 12 years, Monday through Friday. My job was to write songs. And most of those days, I would show up with a guitar and my co-writer would show up with a guitar. And we would sit there and interact and co-write. Now, I was thinking, I definitely have written with more than 100 different collaborators. It wouldn't surprise me if it was 200. And I have felt the magic, the, oh my God, this is everything you want as a songwriter. Maybe I have felt it with 3 people. And I don't want to leave anybody else out. So I'll just mention 2 of them.
Okay.
One is Karen Taylor Good. The other one, AJ Masters, who passed away way too young. When I was in the room with those people, things would come out of me that I just can't even explain it. That would never have come out if anybody else was in the room. And melodies and lyrics would come out of me that I never would have written if I were by myself. There was something inexplicable in that energy, in that
like
chemistry.
Synergistic sort of thing in the connection that you had.
Yeah. It was just incredible. The songs
was that noticeable immediately in just the interpersonal dynamic as well?
Now that's a great question, because absolutely the answer is yes with the 2 people I mentioned. But there's at least one other person where I had that magic chemistry and we had just nothing in common. And it's not that this wasn't a nice person, but we just came from different worlds. I mean, this was somebody who was so country. And you can hear from the way I talk, I'm from the South, but it's South Philly. And, you know, really, when I was with this other guy, it was a creative connection more than any kind of a personal connection. We weren't friends. We didn't become friends outside of the writing room. But there were those few cases where it was just like magical. And nothing can replace that. But I want to say that was primarily happening, not exclusively, but mostly in country music, because that's where mostly people sit down with a guitar, with the person in the room, and you go back and forth. But that has changed a lot. And now more people are writing country songs to existing backing tracks. Some of the big Carrie Underwood hits were written that way. And I've written songs with a band where they brought in an existing backing track, and then we all sort of acted as top liners to that track. But the track was already there for country music. That has become a lot more prevalent. And I will tell you, in case anybody thinks I know the answers, if you had asked me 10 years ago if that would happen, I'd have laughed in your face. I said, that will never happen. Country music is about guitars and sitting there in the room together. And it's not necessarily anymore. But of course, country music is not country music anymore. compared to, I mean, it's a new definition of country music, not the one that people used to think about. I mean, I don't think anybody's writing Alan Jackson and George Jones kinds of songs to existing backing tracks.
Yeah.
I think it's the more pop side of country that's happening with.
So besides being able to edit yourself when you get a track, is your approach different to writing with a track, as opposed to being in the room with somebody?
Sure, in that regardless of whether I'm in the room or whether I'm writing to a track, I like to have a long list of titles and concepts and phrases that I've prepared in advance, that I collect. Mm-hmm. They're in a file marked future hits, because I'm an optimist. And they're, all my possible titles, phrases, interesting, ways to frame something. And what I do is, if I'm face to face with somebody, I'll run those ideas past the person. Sometimes they'll have ideas also, but part of what I do well as a songwriter is come up with these concepts. That's, different people have different skills. Believe me, there are lots of skills that I'm very weak at as a songwriter. I'm especially weak in the department of chords. And I'm not a great guitarist, so I'm not going to come up with the best grooves or the best chords. But I tend to come up with good song ideas, with original angles and new ways to say it. So if I'm sitting in the room with somebody, we're going to run those ideas past each other, and we're going to pick an idea and probably start by working on a chorus, but not necessarily. But that would be the most common way. But if I'm just writing to somebody's track, what I'm doing is letting the track play over and over again while I'm looking through my ideas and trying to hear, what is this track saying to me? What is?
And do you typically have some direction at all in regard to, we want this song to be about this topic, or is it totally open typically?
I can only think of one instance where I wrote a song where somebody gave me a topic that they needed, and I wound up not writing to that topic. I'll tell you the story. I had gotten a track from a publisher, and it was really great track. And I just have to put this out there because I think people tend to be really sexist and think of as the track producer as the guy. But in this instance, this track came from a woman. And she was a fantastic producer and composer of tracks. So I listened to the track and I asked the publisher, is there some, because I should mention, this was specifically for sync licensing, television and film placement. That's what this publisher specialized in. So I asked him, do you have something in mind, a concept, an idea? Is there something that you would like this song to be about? And he sort of shrugged and said, for sync, it can be almost anything. But for some reason, lately, I've been getting a lot of requests for songs about money. I thought, money? Show me the money. And I thought, well, that is just way too cliche. I can't write a song called Show Me the Money. I started thinking, what if it was, okay, you're coming on to me. You want to get down with me? There's something I got to see. Show me the honey. And I took the twist off money to honey, and that became the most successful song I've ever written for sync licensing. Show Me the Money has been on more than 20 major television shows and movies. I'm talking Scrubs, Friday Night Lights, Assassination Games, the list goes on and on. And but typically the answer is no. I don't know a topic, and I'm just looking through my titles while I'm listening to the track and just asking the track, what are you saying?
So you're getting a vibe from the track, a feeling from the track.
Absolutely. The classic example of that, being the luckiest songwriter on the earth, and I am really not kidding when I say that, this story will hammer that home. my publisher at the time called me and said, "What are you doing this afternoon?" I said, "Well, I've got a demo session with Karen Taylor Good." He said, "Well, if you can cancel it and get in your car in the next 15 minutes and drive to Muscle Shoals, Alabama," which was about a 3.5-hour drive.
Mhm.
He said, "I've got you set up to write with one of the Backstreet Boys."
Mhm.
I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yep, one of the Backstreet Boys is at Gary Baker's house, and you can do a 3-way." And
What year are we talking about?
99, I think, give or take 1 year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 99.
Mhm.
So I got in my car, and the first thing I did after canceling Karen was I stopped at Walmart and I bought the first Backstreet Boys album because I'd never heard it.
Mhm.
And man, I was blown away by the melodies, the simplicity of the melodies, the way they just like after a first chorus, I could sing the next chorus. There were, I mean, of course, these were mostly Max Martin melodies, and he's the master of the universe when it comes to this.
Mhm.
So I was just like stunned at how strong these melodies were. When I got to Gary's house, Kevin of the Backstreet Boys, he's the one who was real tall with the black bushy eyebrows.
Okay.
He brought in an existing, I won't say a whole music track, but maybe a 16-bar fragment that was fully him playing it on a keyboard, and it was fabulous. And we listened to it, we looped it, listened to it over and over again. And that track was so clearly telling me what it was about. Now, remember, I wasn't preparing for a Backstreet Boys session. I had no ideas stockpiled that were going to be for that kind of genre. It's not what I was writing. And I just kept listening to the track, and it was so melancholy. It was just speaking to me, saying to me, "Tell me what to do. What do I say? What do I do? How do I get this back again on track? I love you. And tell me the words to say, the road to take to get back to your heart." And it was as if the track told me what to write. It was really an amazing experience. And I think that's what a really good track can do.
Uh-huh.
That and a whole lot of pressure.
And a whole lot of preparation too.
Yeah, well, like 25, 30 years of preparation at
Yeah,
that point.
that's what I mean is even though you weren't expecting this session, this writing session, you had been preparing for, for your whole life. So what is, what was that collaboration like as far as, so the track speaks to you and it gives you an idea. So then do you kind of think this through and then say, here's my idea, and then you kind of bounce things back and forth, or how did that work?
I think once I got that idea, I ran it past Gary and Kevin, and they were both like, "Yeah, that sounds really good." The idea that Kevin had played was really a musical interlude. It wound up becoming the intro, and it became a section between the verses and the outro. It set the tone of the song, but the actual verses and the choruses still needed to be written. Gary Baker, there's a reason why Gary Baker is phenomenally successful. And, he co-wrote I Swear, which was Song of the Decade, the most airplay in the 80s. So I've got to tell this really crazy story. And then you can remind me to get back on the writing process with Gary and Kevin.
Any stories are welcome.
Okay, so here's the story. So crazy. Gary was nominated for a Grammy for I Swear. And Karen Taylor Good, who I mentioned, was nominated the same year for a Grammy Country Song of the Year for How Can I Help You Say Goodbye, which is one of the greatest songs I think ever written. Patty Loveless had the hit with it. Karen's version, nobody can ever touch Karen's versions of any of her songs. So there was a day when just by weird coincidence, I had 2 writing sessions. I had Karen in the morning, I had Gary in the afternoon. They had never met each other. Well, by now, the Grammys were over, and Gary won the Grammy for Country Song of the Year for I Swear, beating out Karen. And I introduced them to each other. It was like they had never met, and it was just really sort of an odd coincidence. And Karen, being sweet as can be, reached out, took his hand and said, "It is so nice to meet the man who stole my Grammy." And so anyway, we returned to our regularly scheduled interview and story about actually writing that song. Gary came up with, to me, the magic moment in that chorus, a chord change that was so unexpected, so unpredictable. To me, it's the magic moment. I don't know what else to say. It's the money moment in the song. It's the moment that makes the song go from, well, that's another really good song, to, ooh, what was that? So
Expected.
yeah, and Kevin's contribution really was what he had already brought in. He had never written a song before. And I think a lot of his contribution, and sometimes this is the most important thing an artist can contribute when you write with an artist, is the sense of what's working for them or not. Is this melody something I would sing, or would I sing it this way instead? Or is this lyric something I would say? Or, I don't think so. Maybe it would feel more natural to me if I sang it this way. And a lot of times that's the best thing, because artists are going to be at all different levels as writers. I've written with really well-known artists who were fabulous songwriters. And I have written with really well-known artists who sort of sit there and read a magazine and go, that sounds good. But still, in those instances, it's so important for me to be able to say, is this something you would say? Sing this back for me. Does this feel comfortable for you melodically? And so there are different things. So in that particular writing session, there was a period where Gary and Kevin went out, and I stayed behind to try and really hash out, a second verse or all the verse lyrics. I was mostly the lyric guy. I'm not saying I didn't contribute melody, but I was more a lyric person than either of those were. So I needed that time to think. And when they came back and I sang the song for them, Kevin just had this like stone face, and he said, "That's really good, man." And I looked at him, and it was one of those, it was a life-changing moment for me when out of my mouth came, "Kevin, I don't know you, you don't know me, we may never see each other again, but I want to tell you something about me. I want a Backstreet Boys cut. I want you to cut this song 100 times more than I want you to say, oh, it's really good, and then you don't cut it. So I need you to tell me what's wrong with this song." Now, the reason I know this had to be 1999 is my book, 6 Steps to Songwriting Success, had just come out in its very first edition. And here I am, the expert on songwriting with like the best-selling songwriting book at that point, asking somebody who has never written a song in his entire life to tell me what's wrong with our song. And he did, because he said to me, it's our songs are just like so easy to sing, and I'm having like a little trouble remembering this chorus. It's like going all over the place. That's exactly what was wrong. The chorus had too many sections melodically. It would establish a melody, and then it would, after a couple of lines, go to a different melodic motif, and then come back to the first one again. And it was a little complicated.
Uh-huh.
And it was like the light bulb went on over my head. And I said, give me 10 minutes, just go away, give me 10 minutes. I know how to fix this. And I changed the lyrics so that every line of the chorus had the same number of syllables.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there was a pickup note, 2 pickup notes, which was, tell me the words to say, the road to take, to find a way back to your heart. What can I do to get to you and find a way back to your heart? No complicated, just a simple melody. And that little rewrite sold 25 million albums.
Wow. So
And
just simplifying it. And also you were very aware of reading him. And so is that something that you've is that partly with all the writing you've done with different people, has that been something that's really been something that you've become more aware of, is how to read people? And also do you collaborate differently depending on the songwriter? Do you approach it differently? I mean, you kind of saying, I think you're kind of telling me you do.
Know, when you ask about the aspect of reading somebody, I got a degree in psychology. And I will confess that by my last year of college, I had decided I wanted to go into music, and all I took was music courses. But
I was a psychology major for a few years, and
were you?
So yeah, I can relate.
Wow. Yeah. So in a sense, I took the perfect major for getting a sense of getting inside people's minds. But no, I don't know if I'm particularly good at that in person, but I think it was just right in my face with Kevin. He did not love this song. It wasn't going to take a genius to figure that out. That he
so you thought, this is my moment, and you acted on. Yeah.
That's really the truth. But yes, there are, like for instance, when I write with Karen Taylor Good, which I haven't done in a long time, but because she's moved in a different
direction. Now with Zoom, you know.
No, but I don't mean physically moved in a different direction. I mean, she's moved artistically into a whole different genre and things.
Okay.
But when we would write together, I would virtually never touch an instrument, because she's such a master with chords and playing keyboard, that the best thing I could contribute would be melody to that part of the of the writing, as opposed to chords. She had that covered, and it gave me more freedom to think melody as well as lyrics. She's a brilliant lyricist also. She's brilliant everything. So with her, it was very different. Yes, we would sit and come up with a concept that we wanted to write about, but then she would sit at the keyboard and start to play. And we would together sort of feel, but there are other people where we would sit and thrash out a lyric first. Let's write the chorus lyric. Let's make sure we're on. So yeah, I don't have just one way. I have probably written every imaginable way that you could write a song. I've written lyrics to somebody's melody. I have written melody to somebody's lyrics. I have written to tracks. I've done it every way there is. And here's the real answer. There's no right or wrong way. The right way is the way that works for that song and that collaboration.
And how do you know? So you'd mentioned with tracks how you can edit yourself, and that can be great because you can really hone in on an idea and refine it. But it can also be a detriment, whereas you can constantly change it and second guess what you're doing. So how do you know when an idea is a good idea and when to stop?
What a great question. For me, here's my belief. The top 3 reasons that songs become successful in order would be melody, melody, and melody. And I feel very strongly that you will never have a hit song, a successful song, without killer melody that burns into people's brains. You can have killer melody with an inane lyric and nobody cares.
It's more the way it makes it feel melodically.
Yeah, perfect example. Massive song, Old Town Road. People, look up the lyric to the second verse. It talks about his bladder. It's like nobody even realizes what he's talking about and how bizarre that lyric is. Yeah. Nobody ever bought that song, ever, because they loved the words so much. Maybe there were aspects of it they latched onto. Similar example, Leonard Cohen, Hallelujah. Absolute masterpiece. Just so everybody knows, I worship Leonard Cohen. I put him in a class. There's just nobody else in that class except maybe Joni Mitchell. The two of them can share the class. And to me, the song Hallelujah is the prime example where people are not listening to the lyric. They are experiencing the emotion of the melody mixed with the word hallelujah. Yeah. Because the song is completely inappropriate lyrically for weddings and funerals and services honoring people who have died in tragedies or the Olympics. It's been used in all of these things. It's a part of the song is about, having an orgasm. And it's a very sexual song, and it has nothing to do with most of the places where it's used. What the listeners are hearing is hallelujah. Yeah. And that's what they're latching onto. So from my point of view, nothing is more important than the melody in your song. So when I'm writing, I have to be sure I'm coming up with the best melody, not the first melody that pops into my head. I do think the biggest pitfall, I have worked with a lot of students over the years. I think the biggest pitfall I notice is this myopic focus on getting the lyric just perfect, but the melody is the first thing that comes out of their mouth when they're sitting at the keyboard or playing the guitar. And now, oh yeah, I got my melody. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter what your lyric says if that melody is not freaking stellar and fresh and unique and like a tattoo on the brain. So for me, I love the idea of being able to have the time to come up with a half a dozen different chorus melodies, maybe a lot more than that, and think about them, and then move away from them. So how do I know which one is right? It's the right one is the one I can't get out of my head at 11 o'clock at night, that night, which is not necessarily the one that I thought was going to be the best one, but it's the one that I can't stop singing. And if I really am at a loss, I can, and I do sometimes, run it past somebody I trust, a co-writer or publisher who I trust, and say, which of these two melodies grabs you? If either one of them grabs you. Yeah. So for me, that's a big advantage to writing where I can really think about it. But you can do that even in a face-to-face session or a Zoom writing session by saying, okay, I love what we got. Let's let it sit a day or two. Let's revisit it and see, is it holding up? See if we can beat anything that we've got. Is there a melody? Is there a chord? Is there that magic note that's going to just go, oh my God, that's what it needed? And, so I think it's really important. We've got too much riding on this. The competition's too tough. Good's not good enough, people. It's like you've got to really push to write the best that you can write. And for me personally, I mean, really, there are people who are geniuses who don't have to deal with this. I know there are. I've written with some of them. But I also know that for me, I can't let my career ride on the chance that the first thing that popped out of my mouth melodically, out of my guitar, out of my pen lyrically, is the best it could possibly be. That if somebody said to me, I'll give you $1 million a week from today if you can make this melody better. Could I possibly make it better? Well, there's a damn good chance, but you can bet I'd try.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I feel like too many people don't look at it that way. It's just, oh, now my melody's done.
Mm-hmm. They just kind of settle with what they came up with originally. And
Yeah.
so would this also be like a signature lick, the what sticks into your head typically? And
What I define as a signature lick in my book is what some people might call an intro, but it's different because it occurs at the place where an intro would occur, at the very top of a song. It can occur other places as well, but it will always occur at the top of the song. And what it is a added hook, a melodic, usually a pretty simple melodic hook. If you want to hear my all-time favorite one, go listen to What Hurts the Most, the Rascal Flatts version, co-written by Jeffrey Steele and I'm blanking on Steve Robson, I think. That lick that opens the song is just instantly has just reeled me in a second. And especially in that song, you hear that lick many, many times throughout the song. And it's a huge contributor to the song's success. And I tell people, if you don't just happen to come up with one off the top of your head, consciously sit there and craft this opening hook. It can be very similar or the same to a melody in your chorus or in your verse, or it can be a completely distinctive, very catchy, hooky melody. The best one, maybe, I don't know, maybe the best one I've ever been involved with writing, not that I actually wrote the lick, but I co-wrote the song with Karen Taylor Good, and the song is called On Angel's Wings. And if anybody wants to Google it, On Angel's Wings, listen to the Karen Taylor Good version, even though country star Collin Raye recorded it, and a couple other people recorded it. Karen's version, just be sure you've got the box of tissues right next to you before you listen. That signature hook, that signature lick at the top of the song is so special. And it was actually something that the keyboard player on the demo session came up with on the spot. And he was not credited as a writer on the song. But Ed Tossing, who came up with that, really had a big contribution. If we had been out of Nashville, Ed would have been listed as co-writer on that song. But the way it works in Nashville is when you hire demo players, that's their job. They're expected to come up with great licks. If they don't, you don't hire them again. Yeah, I mean, that's part of their job. But Ed was thanked and rewarded in that instance, but he wasn't considered a co-writer. So I don't care who comes up with that lick, as long as it's there.
You noticed it and you said that, that's that lick. We need to use that lick.
Oh my God, yes. It was so beautiful, so special. And I might add, when I come up with or have a song with, whether I come up with it or not, have a song with a signature lick in it, 100% of the time, when that song gets recorded, they cop that lick note for note. I mean, if it's a good lick and good enough to get them interested in the song, they want it. And that brings up, basically with demos in general, most of my demos sound like exactly like the demo when it's recorded by an artist. And I'm glad of that. It's like the few instances where they changed things, I usually don't like it. But I tell people our demo is not just so that we can get a song cut. It's so that we can express our vision for our baby. Otherwise, they're not going to come and ask you, how do you think we should do this? You know, you had your chance to say that when you delivered the demo. And like I said, most of the time, it's just note for note. I've heard somebody joke that there are no record producers anymore. They're reproducers. And like I said, we can complain about that if you want, that, you know, oh, they should be able to do this or that. But from my point of view, I'm glad that they are using my vision. And like I said, when they don't, sometimes I don't like it.
Yeah. And so this is as someone who is a drummer, I'm just curious your thoughts on what like a song like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, which, you know, starts with a very signature drum part, which Steve Gadd, the drummer, doesn't get credit for that. What are your thoughts about that? As far as you know, then there was the whole Marvin Gaye thing. Do you have thoughts about that?
You know, the whole Marvin Gaye thing, I found just shocking, because I had always grown up as a songwriter. If I've grown up, you know, at all, it reminds me of the old joke, mommy, I want to be a songwriter when I grow up. Well, you can't do both, Johnny.
That goes for drummers too, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Hold on just a second, because I've got somebody at my door. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No problem. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. Talking with Jason Blume.
So sorry about that. My handyman was supposed to get here in about 20 minutes, and he's early. So what were we talking about? Let's see.
Well, so I was just asking you what your thoughts were about a group.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. You know, like I said, I had always believed and had been taught that the only thing you can copyright is actual melody and actual lyric, not a groove, not a feel. And, you know, apparently that has shifted. And I understand it. And if something feels so much like something else, I can see how that could be called infringement. But it makes me sort of uncomfortable. I mean, I think it's just so vague. There's no law. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you can do 6 notes that are the same without. There's no law like that. It's a matter of whether a jury who is consulting with musicologists is going to make a determination. Yes, you've ripped this off, or no, you haven't. And it's scary. It's a difficult situation. You know, I'm not sure what else to say about that.
That says a lot. And so you're from Philly, and then you went to LA, and then what originally brought you to Nashville?
Well, never in a million years did I think I would be in Nashville or writing country music. I went to LA to be a pop writer, and you know, there's the famous stories. I feel like I'm obligated to say the truth. I lived in one room, no kitchen, no bathroom, cockroaches, mice, hookers and junkies living in the other 1 rooms. And I was so poor during that period of time. I ate cat food, and that's the truth. And people who follow my Facebook posts know I'm the crazy cat man.
You foster cats, and you have some adorable.
I have fostered 25 neonatal kittens, meaning bottle babies that had to be fed every 2 to 3 hours through the night. I feed an entire colony of feral cats, and I have 3 of my own. Plus, I do all the photography for the local Humane Society's cat website.
So your affinity to cats maybe came from eating their food?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm sorry, I have a fur ball. Anyway, but I didn't have a cat back then. But what I had was 11 cents. And 11 cents that I found by digging in the cushions of the sofa, 11 cents was enough to buy a can of cat food. So I was very poor back in those days. But you know, I really have to emphasize when I tell this, I was happy. I was following my dreams. I was going to be a success. I gave it a year, by the way. And so never dreamed that Nashville could be part of that picture.
Mm.
And when I got tired of eating cat food and sharing a bathroom down the hall with the junkies and the hookers, I decided that, well, you know, if I've got to work more of a job, because I had only been working 15 hours a week at that point so that I could focus on my songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
I decided if I have to work a job, maybe I can get one that would advance my knowledge or my connections in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
So I registered with a temp agency that I learned provided temps to the entertainment business, that was their specialty. So they sent me to a lot of things that were like of no connection, but they were entertainment industry. You know, I'd be filing in the back room of a television office or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the gates of heaven opened up and they sent me on a temp assignment to RCA Records in the country music department.
Mm-hmm.
And my first day, my first hour on the job, my job was, now this is how long ago I'm going back. My job was to take a vinyl 45 single, put it between two pieces of cardboard and mail it to the radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
And the artist that we were promoting was a brand new, unheard of act named The Judds.
Uh-huh.
And it changed my life because I thought country music was garbage. I thought it was whiny, cheating, drinking, stupid, horrible songs. And suddenly, those voices, those songs on that first album, oh my God, the productions, Wynona's voice, I mean, everything changed my life. It was like, I have to do this. I want to do this. And I wrote a song that in my mind was the perfect song for the Judds. Since we're going to run out of time, I don't want to drag out the whole story, but I will tell you that I brought that song to a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in Los Angeles and he told me there were 4 things I needed to fix in the song. I thought that was pretty good. Only 4 things, except he said those 4 things were the words, the music, the verses, and the choruses. To make a long story short, there were 7 rewrites and 7 demos. And midway through, I brought in Brian Cumming as my collaborator because Brian, although he lived in Los Angeles, was from Georgia. So he must know how to write country music, right?
Uh-huh.
So Brian and I, and that's a great instance of where there was a collaboration where Brian brought something I could never do. And part of what he brought was the opening signature swampy groove, this lick that was so memorable on guitar because he's an amazing musician. He can play anything.
Uh-huh.
And I could never have brought that lick to this song, and it almost defined the song and the feel of it. So after 7 rewrites, the song got FedExed to the publisher's Nashville office, and the next day it was recorded as a single on a new artist. Didn't earn a lot, but it was like, oh my God. I went to Nashville to co-write with the producer of that song. By the way, that's the first country song I had ever written, although I'd probably written hundreds of pop songs.
Uh-huh.
The co-writer, the producer, had written 6 #1 country singles. I'm like, oh my God. So somebody said to me, were you intimidated? It was like, no, I wasn't intimidated. It was light years beyond intimidated. I was petrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to go into a situation like that or any high pressure co-write just hoping I would happen to come up with something that day. I spent 2 weeks before the trip every day just coming up with choruses, concepts, lyrics, phrases, little melody snippets, anything.
Mm-hmm.
And on that trip, the publisher, the person who was supposed to write with me, blew me off. His publisher instead introduced me to AJ Masters and said, y'all go write a hit. And we wound up writing Change My Mind, which was 1,000 times better in anything I had ever written. And it's because AJ was such a pro. But I had brought in the whole lyric except for the bridge. So it's not as if I didn't contribute much. And then we co-wrote the melody together. And then my life changed, right? No. Even with this incredible demo and a song light years better than anything I'd ever done, took 3.5 years for the song to get recorded. But it got recorded by the Oak Ridge Boys, who were superstars, mega superstars. And I was told I would be their second single off the album. First single, like everything else they do or did, boom, right to #1. And now it's time for my single to come out. And I listen to it and I go, this is horrible. There is no way on earth that this could be successful. In fact, I don't even want my name on it. It is so horrible.
What was so horrible about it?
Oh my God, just listen to it. Go to Change My Mind, the Oak Ridge Boys, and see the video. The quote unquote harmonies sounded to my ear like chalk on a board. And they changed a melody thing that was just like, it was like torture to listen to it. This is what it was supposed to sound like in the middle of the chorus. It was, change my mind, say you couldn't live without me, say you're crazy about me, with a look, with a touch, just a little thing like that. And then suddenly we have 4 out-of-tune voices singing with a look, with a touch. And I was like, oh my God, is it a joke? It wasn't a joke. So anyway, that awful recording getting ready to be released as a single, I owned my publishing on it, and every publisher in Nashville offered me a record deal, a publishing deal, staff writing deal. It had been my dream this was 11 years after I moved to Los Angeles. And all I lived for was to earn a living as a songwriter. And now 6 companies in Nashville offer me deals. I chose the deal that offered me the lowest amount of money up front. Because I'm crazy.
To be able to have more of ownership over what you're doing. And
no, that wasn't it. The ownership was the same on everything.
Creative.
I needed that money. No, you're not going to guess the reason. And it's the most important lesson, because that company was going to offer me opportunities. Why? They owned a record label, not the other way around. The publisher owned the record label, and they would be able to put me with their artists. They also had see, I was in Los Angeles, even though I was being signed in the Nashville office, I would be able to connect to people in their Los Angeles office, New York, London, all around the world. That was what I wanted, not an extra $5,000 a year.
Yeah.
And it was the best decision of my entire life, because little could I have known at that point in time that that company would sign an unknown Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears, and the rest was history.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with me and sharing stories and insights. Thank you, folks.
One last thing I should say quickly before I go. If people go to my website, which is Jason Blume, JasonBlume.com, they can see the dates for all the upcoming BMI workshops, and they can learn about the books